and bears. But our koalas, they are actually not bears at all. So as placental mammals, humans are more closely related to bears than our koalas are. So our koalas are something called a marsupial, and this is a word that you guys have probably heard before, but used more with our kangaroos and our wallabies. And it is basically just a fancy word for a mammal that also has a pouch. So our female koalas all have pouches. It comes in really handy because their pregnancy or their gestation is incredibly short. It's only about 30 to 35 days. So in comparison to a human's 9 months, that's very little time for a development of that baby. And it does mean that when those koalas are born, they are incredibly underdeveloped. They are about the size of a jelly bean, and they look a little bit like one as well. So the only thing that is developed on them at that time is their nose, their mouth, and 2 little forelimbs. So they obviously then have to make their way into mum's pouch, and they actually do that journey all by themselves. So if mum is feeling particularly generous, she might lift a pathway through her fur for that joey to follow. They are doing the majority of that on their own within minutes of being born. So once they are up into that pouch, they will attach themselves to one of mum's teats, and they will stay there for around 6 to 7 months, with basically developing the rest of the way. So Kira's showing off a little bit today. At around the 7-month mark, those koalas, those joeys, they do actually look like koalas, just in miniature. And then they start coming out of the pouch a little bit more as well, and start trying to eat the same thing that mum does, and that is, of course, our eucalyptus leaves. Now here in Australia, we have about 700 different species of eucalyptus, and our koalas, as a species, will eat around 40 to 50 of those eucalypts. Now, it is an interesting food for our koalas to eat because it is actually a toxic plant species. So you can see Kira here, she's deciding whether she's going to bother having a bit of a snack or whether she's going to go back to sleep. It's a really hard decision. It takes a lot of brain power. So you can see here with Kira, while she's eating those leaves, or while she's deciding whether she's going to eat those leaves, she's actually smelling them before she eats them. So she is very, very fussy, and she is going to pick the best leaf off that branch. And as we said before, it is a toxic plant species, so those nice fresh leaves right at the end of the leaf, that is the best option for her to choose. So those big noses on their faces, it's not just for show, they are incredibly powerful. It can tell her, just by sniffing those leaves, she can tell what species she's eating, which is actually swamp, so she's really enjoying that one today. As you can see for the rest of those branches, there's a lot of leaf missing. So she can tell what species it is, how old that leaf is, how much toxin is in the leaf, how much water content is in there as well. So our koalas will get all of their water from those leaves. They live in the very tops of the trees, so they're not really going to bother coming down to the ground for some water. So it's really, really important that she's picking the best leaves off that branch. Anyone have a guess at what pup is? Anyone feeling brave? No? That's alright, I'll tell you. It's poo. No, it's poo. I know, sorry if you're eating, it's really gross. Anyway, so those joeys will actually stimulate mum to create a special kind of poo. So you'll see the little poo pellets in here, because as much as we try, they just keep pooping. So that's their normal poo, but the pap is actually a lot softer, so it's a bit more like porridge in consistency. I know, really gross. So those joeys will eat that pap multiple times, usually around a week at a time. And it actually stimulates the right bacteria to start growing in their gut. Yeah, really, really important for them. And that allows them to more easily break down those eucalyptus leaves. And really important as well that while those joeys are eating that pap, mom's eating a lot of different species of eucalyptus, because each of those different species will create different kinds of bacteria, and then those joeys can eat a whole bunch of different leaves for the rest of their lives. Which is really important because while Kira is eating swamp, and that is her favourite at the moment, other koalas have different favourites, and their favourites do change throughout the year as well. So, along with being a toxic plant, our eucalyptus is also very low in nutritional value. So, all of our koalas here on rooftop, we have, I want to say, 7 adults up here on rooftop. Changes every now and then. Kira awake at the moment. And that's very normal. Our koalas will sleep around 20 hours of the day. I promise you it's not because they're fine and it's not because they're drunk off the leaves. It is simply because they don't have a lot of energy to expend on anything else besides processing their food. Now, you might be wondering if these animals are sleeping for 20 hours of the day, surely something must eat them because it would be very easy to grab a sleeping animal and have a bit of a snack. But very lucky for our koalas, one, they're eating eucalyptus, so they probably don't taste very good. And it means that they don't have a lot of native predators here in Australia. So we do have carnivorous animals, carnivorous natives, but ones are in the same area that our koalas do. Others are not big enough to eat koalas or to catch them, and they don't really climb to the very tops of the trees either. So our koalas are very, very lucky, and that's one of the reasons they've managed to continue to live and develop basically as an animal that just sleeps all the time. Now they are at risk from introduced species, things like dogs, cats and foxes. They will all prey on our koalas when they come down to the ground, and they have had a pretty terrible effect on koala numbers in the past few decades, well, the past few hundred years. But unfortunately for our koalas here in Australia, their biggest threat is actually us. So it's a terrible surprise, I know, but unfortunately here in Australia we actually have one of, if not the worst mammal extinction rates in the entire world. And that's pretty terrible considering how many unique species we do have. With that kind of destruction, basically it comes down to the amount of deforestation that happens here in Australia. So our koalas do live on the east coast of Australia. That's where our eucalyptus grows in abundance, all the way from up in northern Queensland down as far as South Australia, all along that east coast. This is also where a majority of our human population is living as well. So wherever we live, we tend to cut down native habitats to build our own habitats, we'll say. So with that, obviously we're taking away their homes, and any homes that are left, they're fragmented. So it means that any of those little pockets of forest that are left, they may not be big enough for the animals that are living there still. And to then find a new habitat to live in or start to find other animals to breed with or other food to eat, our koalas have to cross over human habitated areas. This puts them at much higher risk of things like being hit by cars. Our animals, unfortunately, they don't have the same kind of road sense that we have, so it is a very high risk for them here in Australia. Now with this as well, obviously, our koala numbers have been in decline for quite a while. A few years ago, we did have an incredibly bad fire season. So we are a country that burns quite regularly every few years. A lot of areas will burn, and that is quite natural. However, our last fire season was a lot drier than we are used to. Our fires were much bigger and much faster as well. So in that one fire season, they estimated that the amount of animals we lost of all species was in the billions. And unfortunately with that, because of the amount of area that burned being koala habitat, it has pushed our koalas over as being an endangered species as well. Now there are some studies to suggest that if we don't do anything to help these animals now, if we just let them go and continue to decline, they will go extinct within